Hi everyone,
Hello.
welcome to our talk. We are recording here on Bunurong country and we'd like to acknowledge elders past and present. Okay, thanks for coming. Today we are going to go through an introduction, who we are, why we're doing this, and then we're going to talk about threat modeling, threats and countermeasures.
Oh, that's us.
That's us.
Yeah.
We met in the union community.
Yes.
We're both members of Parent Union Professionals Australia.
Yeah. And I'm Gyle. I basically hang out in different online communities, and that's how I met Maize. And I have this joke that I go on like side quests with people I meet online, and through that, I get to learn about their industries or what they do, gain friends, and then um, learn about like their challenges and particular reason why we started collaborating on this talk. It was like an idea that came out during PAX, just talking about the industry. And I heard it was the first time I heard about Gamergate. And to be frank, I had this like I was sad, and then I get angry, and then I thought like I anger leads to nothing. So I think that let's channel this into some sort of like a talk, because there are things that I know coming from the infosec industry, and I work as an incident responder. I have digital forensics and incident response skills, and there's things that I know that realize that that other people in other technical industries may not know. Yeah. And
Our skills are highly specialized, and though we are tech savvy, there isn't always a massive amount of crossover with InfoSec. But we know that workers are getting more and more targeted, whether it's back in 2013 or whether it's now. We still face backlash and scary things. Yeah.
so that's basically the reason why we're doing this. And I thought of the title Cyber Kung Fu because years ago I took some martial arts classes, like I went to karate and I also did Krav Maga. And I went to those classes not because I'm looking to become a street fighter, although my name sounds like that character from that game.
So
Uh,
cool.
it's not because I wanted to go out and fight someone. It's more about having the discipline of doing those movements, okay, and being able to use those movements like in case put in a compromising situation. But before that, it's having the ability to basically scan the environment and figure out like, hey, there are like risks here and all those things, and take the correct countermeasures to help protect myself. And if something happens, I'll be able to use those skill sets. And today, so we're gonna be like it's like cyber kung fu. The things that will teach you is about protecting yourself, defending yourself. It's not going out there to actually harm somebody else. Okay. Yeah.
We're learning to be proactive. We can't all have the skills like Gyle, coming from InfoSec and having so much knowledge and discipline, but with the support of people like you, and each other, we can adopt that discipline, presence of mind, and some handy defense mechanisms.
Yes. So before we start with like talking about the defense mechanisms, okay, let's first define a threat model. And I'd like to refer you to a great talk last year. There's something about threat modeling that was covered in last year's Technically Games conference, and just search for that in the YouTube. I know it's there. So there's a really like in-depth threat modeling. But for those of you who may not have time to go through that immediately, we'll just define what is a threat model.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a term that I hadn't heard really before.
Yeah. So in terms of the InfoSec area, there's this concept called threat model. It's basically a process where an organization will identify what are the potential threats that are, against their organization, and then they prioritize certain mitigations. Or if you're a developer, think of it like before you start on creating, let's just say, software, doing your coding, your development, you try to think of what are the potential threats against your application software, and you try to figure out what are the mitigations that we could put in place. So the outcome here is that you have an abstraction of your system, okay, and you have a profiles of your potential attackers, and then you have a catalog of potential threats. So in Infosec, we have what is called the security triad, CIA, not the espionage agency, but rather it stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So if any of those tenets is broken, then of course there's going to be effects, like if, for example, confidentiality of the client information in your application has been breached. We all have heard about like all the different data breaches for the past few weeks, right? So there's going to be that real life effect, something that happens in the cyber world, or in, like, let's just say your online application or your game has repercussions in the physical world. Okay. And more specifically, okay, what we're gonna be working on is like, think of your personal threat model. So you basically look at potential threats to your personal security. So for me, as a woman, underrepresented minority, look at me, I'm, you know, like my skin color, my looks, and all those things. At an early age, and having grown up in a very patriarchal, you know, macho society, I've had a lot of, you know, threats. Like I've encountered threats. Like, just I remember like this particular thing that it's a story like, you know, years ago. I was just walking on the street. It's a major street, and there was major traffic jams. There was a truck driver sitting there bored and saw me and started calling out to me. Of course, I don't know him, and I just, you know, continued walking. And then he yelled at me and said, "You're so snobbish, Miss Hottie." It's in my first language, which is Filipino. And then I said, like, "I don't know you." And then he said, "You're so hottie, wait there, I'm gonna, like, you know, run my track and kill you." And like, so I was so taken back, like, I don't know you, you know, why are you like doing this? And just like said, like, you can't because you're stuck there, you know, in traffic. And I immediately walk and then, like, you know, run away. And at that age, I realized that I have to be really careful, you know, and it's sort of like sometimes it becomes like, it's sometimes people will say there's like some sort of like paranoia, but because I've had a lot of these incidents of like street harassment, you know, my personal, you know, space being violated. And so whenever I go to a certain place, like in my previous jobs, I've had the fortunate, you know, job role for I got to travel to different parts of the world. So before I go to a certain place, I would research the local norms and cultures, research the location, and I didn't know before I specialized in cybersecurity that there was a term called threat model. I didn't know that I'm already been doing threat modeling all my life.
Yeah, you know, and I think that any minority can relate to that, whether it's, you know, holding your keys in your fist on your way home, or having spray deodorant that you can use, or even if you're neurotypical and you're masking, even that is a way of mitigating threats.
Yeah.
So all of these things that we have habits for already, we're being proactive about it.
Yeah. And for you out there, there's these 5 questions that would help you formulate your personal threat model. We got it from this website, a privacy guide, you know, website. So, by the way, all the slides here, okay, this is a recording. Please don't hesitate to take photos of it and use it for your own purposes, or share it with your loved ones. But let's just blur our faces.
Yeah.
Yeah. So feel free to get all this information and use it to your advantage.
So what are our threats as game workers in a digital space? You know, we are pressured to have a certain amount of transparency with our audience, with gamers and consumers. And that can really blur the lines between what is personal for us and what is work when we're representing a company. There's all kinds of social media that we're on where we are more individuals, like Twitter, Reddit, Facebook and Instagram, even some unfortunate forums like 4chan and 8chan. And then there are the more explicitly corporate spaces like company discords, where we're encouraged to engage with gamers, or LinkedIn, where our profile is linked to the company that we work for. And we know in previous targeted harassment campaigns that LinkedIn is one of those, along with Twitter, two of those resources that people use a lot to target people who work for specific companies. And then there's company blogs. As an indie, we love it if Sony publishes a blog for us, or a platform announces, or a publisher. But what ways can we really mitigate that turning into individual targeted harassment? So here's some general personal cybersecurity hygiene.
I'll cover this.
Yeah.
So
I'll interject with little comments.
of course, definitely. So first, use separate devices for work and personal use. So just in case, you're in a company Discord and, somebody targeted you there and like sent you, let's just say, spear phishing links, or let's just say like ask you to download without you knowing that this is like malicious. If it gets infected, at least your personal information's not gonna be available to them, because you may not know it, but it could be that something that was supposedly like a game has a key logging capabilities, or it could be that they have remote viewing capabilities. But you said something before about the challenge of having these separate devices.
We know that half of our industry is contractors, and that does mean that often we're using the same gear personally as we are for work. We can't all afford to have two huge gaming machines. So what do we do then when you can't necessarily have separate gear?
Okay, so just briefly, but I'll touch more later about it. So I'll be talking about virtualization options, and some other tools available there. So that's gonna come up right up in the next slides or so.
Great.
Yeah, but one thing for sure, make sure that for your personal phone, you don't have corporate stuff there.
Yeah, it's a good excuse to not do work stuff on your phone. Love that. No Slack pings on my phone.
Yes. Okay, now use unique passwords and don't reuse them. Sometimes it's difficult to think of unique passwords, so you can use password managers for that, because password managers will have a password generator, and then you can also tweak that. So that's something that you can use. And then something I want to highlight, for I believe everybody in the gaming industry is like born at a certain like part of the century. I was born in the previous century, so I like to pretend I'm immortal. No, I'm just kidding. So no matter if you're like born like like early 2000, there was like no social media, Facebook and all those things. Potentially one of your family members or your relatives would have like posted something about you when you were young. And then most of those security questions for resetting your password will be things from your childhood. And they could, if anyone's like targeting you, they could easily find that out. And they could try to do a password reset on your account and then answer those security questions successfully. So since you're in games, so I suggest you use a fictional character with a complete backstory to create those security questions and answers, because some places you can, some platforms you can create your own security questions, or sometimes they have their own predefined security questions. So you base your answers on that fictional character, which is like totally separate from your, your actual reality. So that's one level of protecting yourself.
I love that, because I think that you're right. If someone tried really hard, maybe they could actually find what primary school I went to, or the name of my first pet, even though I was not born this century either.
We're both immortals.
Yes, awesome. That sounds really fun.
Create a fictional character. And then another thing, you need to make sure that aside from your passwords and your usernames, you use a multi-factor authenticator. Or multi-factor authentication. And then in light of the recent, breaches, okay, make sure that instead of relying on SMS, if the platform has the security setting wherein you can enable multi-factor authentication on your account. If there's an option to have an authenticator software, you can use Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, or some other platforms, they even allow you to have a hardware token. Okay, so it's something that you have. It's not just something you know. Okay, if somebody is trying to hack into your account, they don't have that, then that's one way to prevent them from getting into your account. Okay, and then other thing I want to point out, there's this, some people think that once you have a private conversation, a PM or a DM, it's, secure. But there's a possibility that something happens in the back end of that platform and suddenly your DMs become public. So be careful about sensitive discussions. In the Infosec community, we typically would be using Signal, and you are on Signal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you like about it?
Well, the fact that it is end-to-end encryption is really good, and the group chats, and we have video and also stickers and things like that. Yeah, my family chat is on Signal. But on that, like, a lot of these platforms like Mastodon, where you don't necessarily know who the moderators are, but even things like Twitter, the reason that they don't use end-to-end encryption in DMs is so that they can do moderation, so that you can report people, and they can see that. So yeah, if you're doing something that you actually want to be private, use something like Signal, or Telegram is another one, I
You
think.
just have to be careful about Telegram because their servers are based in, I will not name the country, but yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Actually, that was an interesting thing on Mastodon. If your server is based in Australia, then you're under Australian law enforcement, and so they can demand that. Yeah. Lots to think about, but use Signal instead.
Okay. And having said that, maybe a few months from now or a year from now, things change in Signal. So we have to also look at other, forms of secure communication. So our discussion right now, or our presentation, is based on what we currently know because things can change. It's very fluid. So just think of this general advice, like use secure communication channels for sensitive discussion. Okay. And then another thing, okay, refrain from oversharing online. It's kind of difficult, especially because you want to be, you want to share a passion with other people, and sometimes you post a lot of things. But if I'm coming from an attacker perspective, anything you share online is something that I can use to my advantage to either target you, harass you, or get any other information that could potentially hurt you, or I could even impersonate you. Yeah.
And we've seen before that also, people's tweets have been used against them when consumers write to your employer and they're like, hey, this person said XYZ. And we're going to talk about this a little later, but you can have some actual procedures put in place at your workplace to make sure that these discussions are done in a fair pro-worker way as well.
Yeah. And then another thing, be cautious with clicking on links and opening attachments. The next slides, there's like some tips that you can apply in your situation that's, will help you if you really need to open that link or like look at that attachment or something.
Yeah, which we do a lot of. The typical indie game doesn't have security certificates, and you have to say run anyway. It comes in a shifty looking .zip file. And, we've seen in the past, if you're a long-time Discord user, we've seen people hack into game developers' accounts and then post on game dev Discord servers, hey, check out the latest build for my game. And, obviously we're all going to download the .zip file. So, yeah, think twice because people know that that's one of our vulnerabilities.
Now, another thing, make sure that you protect the security of your systems. You always apply software updates, security patches to the systems you use. Sometimes we're all VC and then you just ignore that. But please, there's a reason why there's what is called like Patch Tuesday, especially for Microsoft. Like there's like certain vulnerabilities found, and then there's an exploit that was created for that, especially if it's a high impact kind of exploit, especially those RCE, they call them remote code execution, wherein they could have control of your system. So just make sure that make sure that you update your system. Okay?
Patch Tuesday, is that common?
Yeah, in
I've
the idea, it's called Patch Tuesday. Yeah, like release from.
My favorite MMO also has Patch Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
That's funny. I never knew that, but
Yeah.
that makes so much sense.
Yeah. So yeah, and then use anti-malware software and always update it.
Yeah. So I've heard recently, before we were always told to use Norton and McAfee and things, but recently I've been told that the built-in Windows Microsoft software, anti-malware software is enough. What do you think?
So you have Defender there, but if you're just being overly cautious, like have redundancy in place, have like another anti-malware software, because it could be that this is something new and it has been identified by other anti-malware software vendors. So, and it may be that Microsoft doesn't have that info yet, so at least you have 2 levels of protection.
Swiss cheese effect.
Yeah. And then always download files from legitimate sources, because sometimes you need a particular software. You found that, there's this free website. There's no such thing as free lunch. Maybe you get that software and there's like it has been modified and you have malware there. Okay, just be careful. Okay. Now, I mentioned earlier about like things like you can use, for example, if you really need to open that link. So one of the tools that I use in my day-to-day job as a defender is this urlscan.io. So think of it, it's a sandbox for the web. So before you click on the link, copy that, go to this site, paste it there, and then what happens is that their system will actually reach out to that site. And then if there's any redirects, it will also show there that there's a redirect. And then it will gather screenshot of the page so you know what it's like. Like, for example, I've seen some spear phishing email, and then look at the link. It looks, just a normal, site. But when it's submitted to URL scan .io, what happens is that this is the page, and then it redirects to another page, and then there is a form there asking the people to get this file or to view this content. You have to put in some details. Okay, so you have this here. Okay, you will see that, and then it will also show you, a classification, a verdict, and it also provides you some, detected technologies behind that site, and then domain and IP information. So, for example, you are expecting sample code from a developer based in New Zealand, and they supposedly have their infrastructure in New Zealand. And then when you go to that site, it's actually redirects, goes to, let's just say, a dodgy country. Like, hey, this is not where the company is based. Why are they using this, site? So it could be that you've already been targeted.
I really found the detected technologies really interesting as well, just from a development perspective. Yeah.
So you have that. Other options, okay, it could be that you only have one system. Okay, so it's like used for your company and also personal stuff. So I suggest you use a virtual machine. So there's VMware, there's VirtualBox. This virtualization software, VirtualBox, is for free. You can set up your own, like Windows there, and then there is what is called free VMs, like the Windows for developers. You can actually get that. Okay, and then use that inside that virtualization software. So you could use that if you need to do your banking and all those things that's inside that VM. Then you could have probably another VM wherein it's a throwaway VM wherein you want to see or interact with that link or that website, because in URL scan, it's just static. It just gets a screenshot. You don't actually get to interact with it. But if you want to interact with it, have a throwaway VM that you just use for opening those suspicious URL. Or if not, you can also use Windows Sandbox. So that's another option wherein if you want to open the application, move it to that sandbox, okay, Windows Sandbox, and then, interact with that. And then once you shut that down, if like there's something dodgy there, shut it down. It doesn't affect your main system. So there's the documentation, the instructions, how to set it up. There's a minimum requirement, you have to be on a Windows 10. So yes, consider these options, okay? Now, other options, okay, for example, there's like the next slide. We have here, okay, if you want to have something analyzed, whether it's malicious, there's a free service called Hybrid Analysis. This is powered by an EDR vendor. EDR stands for Endpoint Detection Response. Okay, so it's called CrowdStrike. There's Hybrid Analysis. You can upload a file there. There's a file size limit of 100 MB. Okay, and then there's gonna be like analysis there on that file, whether it's like there's malicious indicators, okay, or behaviors. Okay, and then we have VirusTotal. So this is a free site. It's a reputation check. You can get the hash of the file, not the zip file, but the actual, let's just say the executable. You can submit it there. And then if this was previously analyzed by other security software vendors and there's malicious reputation, it will show up in VirusTotal. Okay, or if it's like totally something new, or it could be recompiled, so there's like a different hash values, something was changed, then potentially there's no previous detection. So there is also an option for you to upload that file that you received from stranger in your company Discord server, and then you can upload it to VirusTotal, and there's going to be analysis done. But please be very careful, because if you accidentally upload, let's just say you're clicking or like uploading and it's like actually a company related file or document, what happens is that once you've uploaded it, it's available to everyone. So be careful not to leak out your your company's secret sauce for that wonderful game you're working on. Okay. Yeah. Well,
So, some social media basic hygiene. Understand that whatever you post is potentially visible to everyone, especially as new platforms are coming up. They might not have settings that, you have to be logged in first or something like that. Just make sure you're aware of that. Check and manage third-party app authorization. So we can often log into a service using Twitter or using Google or using Instagram, and we're giving permission to a third party that you might forget about in the future. So you can check it and make sure that, maybe just untick or unauthorize all of these services that are out of date.
Yeah. Other thing that you have to be careful about third-party apps is because you may have like linked something, and then as you mentioned, you've forgotten about it. Then later on, that particular application provider's infrastructure or system has been pwned, or like there's like a data breach, so your information is like part of that data breach now. Yeah. Anyway, so
check and use the privacy and visibility settings. So most social medias will have some kind of privacy and visibility. Make sure that you understand what they are and check them fairly often, because they'll change. And also when these social medias update, sometimes your settings will get reset or something as well.
Yep.
And that links to investigating those built-in anti-harassment features. For example, not having DMs allowed, or no retweeting of your messages, or limiting replies and things like that. Keeping up to date with what tools there are can really help.
Now, another thing that should form as part of your defense, you're preparing for this, is use different usernames, or, separate usernames between your personal and your company related accounts. Okay, it's a way to compartmentalize things and to limit the blast radius if something happens, like your corporate social media identity, at least your personal stuff is not affected. Okay. Now, For me, I volunteer for an nonprofit organization called Trace Labs, wherein we use OSINT for good. OSINT stands for Open Source Intelligence, because there's a lot of stuff that we post online that we could use to help find missing people. So the mandate is using this OSINT for good to find missing people. And one of the tools that we constantly use is called What's My Name, that app. That's a free website, because we humans were creatures of habit. We like, we like a username, and then we start using that all over the place. And if you're a missing person, potentially there are like clues left behind in those different accounts. But this is one useful, tool to use. Now, coming from a mindset of, let's just say, an attacker, like using OSINT for bad or OSINT for evil, I sometimes joke that if I woke up evil, there's like all this knowledge that I have.
No,
I want to be like
that's not a funny
good. No,
joke.
no, but seriously,
Yeah.
all these skills and knowledge that I have in terms of the defensive side could also be used on the offensive side. So like what I said, this particular tool can also be used by, let's just say a stalker or a disgruntled, a customer, a client or something, to hunt more information about you. And that's why the recommendation earlier to have compartmentalization of your different, usernames, user accounts, those things. Yeah.
Yep. So digital corporate spaces. When we're put into company discords or put onto blogs or things like that, that's when our employers really need, or they have the obligation to protect our health and safety. And they need to put processes down that are active towards that. So some pro-worker action plans can be using technical controls to protect your people. So whether those are different security measures on your discords and setting up digital environments with security in mind. And earlier when we were talking about when a worker is targeted, making sure that you understand that that's something that happens in games, and to go with the worker first instead of the customer,
Because one thing that I just want to highlight, okay, I know that in any industry, there's always this thinking that the customer is always right. But if your customer is berating, humiliating, harassing, stalking your employees, these are your human resources, you don't just leave them, you deal with it, it's your personal problem. No, because the very fact that they work for you, and it's because of the job that they're doing, the things that, they're contributing, their skills, knowledge, their creativity for your game, that means you have that duty of care to take care of them. Okay.
Yeah.
You basically don't throw away your resources to the wolves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So email, our work email, something that we use all the time.
Yeah. So in terms of your technical controls, okay, if you're using, let's just say G Suite, like Office 365, all those things, there will be security tools available for you. You can filter. You can use filter in terms of derogatory words. So like these are incoming email. Like it could be like your workers being harassed. So you can actually filter that, and it doesn't get to their inbox. Okay, and then you can actually use the What's My Name, like hunt those for known usernames of trolls and all those things, and you could be proactive and actually just have a block list for block those known usernames of those trolls. And you mentioned earlier about the blog posts.
Yeah. There's often people posting on Twitter, here are some words to filter out, like SJW or those kinds of derogatory terms as well. Yeah, on that point of not publishing individuals' email addresses, we love when Sony posts a blog about our game and things. You were saying instead we can use a mailbox. So rather than Maize at Ghost Pattern, have it going to info at Ghost Pattern.
Yeah, something like that. Yes. Yeah, so that the individual's email address is not exposed out there, and it's in a group mailbox. So if, let's just say, somebody's like out there to get Maize, and then it's gonna be that email is actually seen by everyone, and they see what's happening instead of having that burden on Maize to get screenshots and show to
Yeah.
everyone and share, because that's like, it's like basically re-traumatizing yourself when
Yeah.
you share that, right? Yeah. And then now, coming from a digital forensics perspective, should there be an incident or an instance that there's like, you have your filters in place, but something gets past the filters, and there's that um very very nasty, like, it could be like stalking, or like something like really there's harassment there. Preserve the evidence, preserve the email message, the message headers, search for your particular email provider, the instructions on how to extract the message headers, because it will show like the IP addresses. Okay. And then also capture the screenshots, preserve them, and you can use this as evidence to complain to the source email provider. For example, there's this troll123@gmail.com, targeting your worker. You could actually complain to Gmail and provide this as proof. Okay. Or if it comes to a point wherein you will engage a lawyer, or you're gonna have like other legal countermeasures, you have your evidence. Okay. And then the good thing about a lot of these online email services, okay, especially that's like for corporate use, they have several anti-malware, anti-phishing services available. So investigate what is available for your corporate email account. Okay.
And if you are self-hosting your email and, not paying for G Suite or Office 365, there are anti-malware and anti-phishing services for you to set up.
Yeah. So you look into that, and once again, you as the employer, even though you may not have like an in-house IT person or something, you can ask around, do your research, okay, and put that in place, because it's a preventative measure, because you don't want to deal with it. You put those things there when bad things are have started happening. So
Yeah, be proactive.
yes, be proactive.
Yeah. So we're all on heaps of Discords, and more we're required to be on Discord for work. Our Discord should have a code of conduct visible straight away, and actually explicit, so that everyone can actively enforce it. Having it written out empowers people to enforce it, and makes enforcement much cleaner as well.
So I also want to highlight here, like if you're the Discord, administrator, even before you start if let's just say you're just starting out and you're setting up your Discord server, do a test Discord server and play around with the settings so that you understand the different built-in security settings there. And then make sure that you create your Discord server with security, and safety, in mind. So one of the things that you could use the highest verification level to control who can send messages in your Discord server. And when you say highest verification level, that means anybody signing up who wants to be part of your Discord server will have to provide their email and their phone number. But it's not something that's visible to you as the Discord server administrator. It's just between the Discord and that user. So if there is this troll, okay, a stalker, like trying to like get into your server, that can become like some sort of like a barrier. Oh no, they know something about me. But they could still, use fake email addresses, phone numbers, and all those things. And that's why you can rely on different controls inside the Discord server. Okay. So the fourth part there, I'll go back to the third one. It's like you can make sure that you turn on the explicit media context filter, and then automate certain things, like use bots to prevent raids. Okay. So they can, take over your server, and then set up these rules wherein users can't post links in certain channels, and then warn them, and then block them from doing that. Or if there's like like these derogatory words that they're using. There's like a dictionary that you could actually put there for the bot, so that if there's these words that are being used that are derogatory, these are immediately blocked and the user is warned, and after X number of infractions, they're like muted or blocked. Okay. And then other thing, okay, so because this is in a corporate, Discord, make sure that all the conversations happen inside your Discord server. Put in your code of conduct that DMs, okay, before you can DM someone, they should ask first for permission. Make sure that your employees or workers, before they join your corporate Discord, they've already hardened their Discord account, and they're not supposed to be easily contactable via DM because they could be like harassed via DMs. And other people in the Discord who is not part of your organization, before they can, DM someone, they have to explicitly ask for permission.
Yeah, and it's also much easier now to have multiple Discord accounts than it was. So if you haven't done that yet, get on that. Yeah.
And then if you're the server administrator, make sure that you protect your server. So I mentioned earlier, using on your accounts, both corporate, personal accounts, multi-factor authentication. Protect your Discord server too by enabling server-wide two-factor authentication. And make sure that you set up roles and permissions. In Infosec, we have this principle called principle of least privilege. So I'm only given the necessary rights or access rights to certain resources to enable me to do my job. So do the same in your corporate Discord, not just for your workers, but also people from the community out there that's like, not in part of your corporate organization. So give them the least privilege. And then, especially this one, turn off the @everyone @here notifications, because there may be accounts that have been compromised and used to attack your servers, attack your people, send spear phishing email, like mentioning this @everyone @here, and then you can customize the bots, like wherein if they mention this, they're actually like warned, the user's warned. And then another thing that I've seen is that in terms of the bots, when they try to start spreading this, spear phishing links or malware attachment and all those things. So what you can do is like have a rule for the bot wherein after the second attempt to post a URL or use like @here @everyone, they're warned and they're blocked. So what you can do is like the first few channels in your Discord server, okay, don't allow certain postings. So there's some sort of like mechanism wherein they're prevented from doing that, and then eventually when they, let's just say, succeed twice or something, then there's enough time for the bot to kick in and do their job.
Yeah.
Okay, so do those experiments, okay, in your experiment, let's call it like dev server, and then your actual corporate Discord, it's your production Discord server. Okay.
Nice. I really like that last tip. It's really clever.
Now.
Yeah. So here are some things that you can really implement in the workplace. Having a dedicated social media manager and community moderators. So actually putting the resources towards this can allow you to create template responses, especially for when there is a release or announcements or chance of backlash. Anticipate backlash and create those unified sets of statements. And that means that no individual is going to be targeted for saying something different. Everyone is saying the same thing.
Yes.
Provide space for people to have a respite from 24/7, 365 online availability to both internal and external. We have gamers from all kinds of time zones and even work from all kinds of time zones, and make sure that there's really strict barriers and have days where you are unplugged and offline.
Yeah, that's very important for your mental health.
Yeah.
Other thing here, I put it here, protect the physical security of your company assets, not just your company assets, but also your workers. So you may be an indie, company, and you're located in a, particular space, make sure that you look at physical security. Are there like, several layers of security? For example, inside a building, so before they can go in there, they have to be buzzed in, and then when they go into that building, if there's a facility in the lift, that they could only go to a certain floor. And then of course you have the physical security of your office main door. Okay, so and then also look at, is there any CCTV surveillance or something, so that if there's like a dodgy individual like loitering around trying to get into your organization, or this is already a known troll and you have done your OSINT for good and found out their profiles, and you know how they look, then you're gonna be like on the watch for those dodgy individuals. So it's not just protecting your assets, okay, it's protecting your workers. And another thing that I want to bring into the conversation, from Infosec, we have what is called the red team, that's like attack simulation. And one of the things that's also done is black teaming. We're trying to get into the building. So it could be that once we get into the building using pretense or social engineering, we then are able to insert certain tools there that will have give us access to their local area network. So if it's a very determined person who's stalking you or stalking your workers, and they have this because all this information is available out there on the internet, and any dedicated attacker can use that to their advantage. So protect your, it's not just cybersecurity, but also physical security.
Yeah, it can feel a little far-fetched, but we've seen it happen in games before.
Okay.
And more, people are normalizing it.
Okay. Now,
So how do we prepare for that potential backlash? You are going to announce the new protagonist for your game, or you're going to announce a delay, or, a new IP. How do we prepare?
to do right now, right at this very minute, protect your location. Okay, first, turn off geolocation on your phone. I know some people may say like, hey, but that would turn off like the personalization in the ads and all those things. So you have to decide for yourself, like, what's your personal threat model, okay? Now, if let's just say, oh, I can't turn it off, second bullet point, check if your photo has GPS details. Okay, so what do I mean by this? The camera app on your phone will actually do geolocation tagging. So if you didn't turn that off, so geolocation tagging is separate from the overall geolocation. Okay, so just turn off putting like any location details on your photos, because in XIF, this is like metadata about your photo, and if there's any GPS information, it will be put in there. And then if you have uploaded it to a website wherein it doesn't strip off the EXIF value, potentially someone who's targeting you stumble into this site and found this photo, then they download that, and then they're able to extract the GPS value and then figure out that, hey, you're generally around this area, or it could be that you took a photo of your pet, so you've given away your home address or your location. Now, having said that, let's use this information. I know this is very controversial. We've been like talking about like fighting misinformation and disinformation, but in this case, you can use this information to your advantage. Like, for example, you work like North Melbourne, have one of your good mates who stays around or lives around like Southeast Melbourne, take photos of coffee shop on a regular basis, and you can use that and post it like, oh, this is my favorite hangout. So you're giving it this information to anybody who's potentially looking for your actual location. Okay, and then if you have photos of yourself or with your mates or your colleagues in your office in social media, remove that, because there could be unintentional data leakage. So part of like doing physical pen testing, black teaming, is doing research on the target company. It's the target companies actually give them a go signal. Yeah, try to penetrate us, but like try to penetrate our physical defenses. So how do they do that? They start looking at employees' postings online. If there's any lanyards, like they're, with the photo, they have a specific lanyard design, they will make a copy of that so that they could blend in. Or even behind you, it could be that you have a printer there, like particular Fuji Xerox, then they could actually get into your office by pretending to be a service technician, saying that, oh, we have a call that there is an issue. Or it could be like, we're here on a quarterly maintenance of your Fuji Xerox printer.
Yeah.
And then you let them in, and they start putting those connections into your LAN. So this is how physical pen testers will do their thing. So potentially an attacker could do the same thing, like they're trying to target you or your organization, or particularly your workers, and then they use this kind of information so that they could use a pretext and get into your organization.
And there was an example of that recently where a streamer took a photo of the hotel chocolate and pillows, and someone was able to identify what hotel she was in.
Yeah, yes, with that. So now, having said that, it could be that you have an Ask Me Anything, session. So in your background, don't give up any information about your home location or your office. Maybe the safest bet is have your corporate
game screenshot.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And then for yourself, your home, okay, consider using a mail redirect, okay, or you can have a PO box. Some post offices will actually have a suite number, so it looks as if it's like a home address when in fact it's a PO box. Or if it comes to a situation wherein you are being targeted and you're physically in danger and you're concerned about your address being publicly available, you can look into becoming a silent elector, because for AEC, they have our details publicly out there. So if your stalker or your attackers, like here in Australia, they could look up that information. So you can look into that. And then another thing is avoid routine. It's to prevent stalkers figuring out your schedule and location. So you go around. And I think you were mentioning before.
Yeah, there was a company, even pre-pandemic, where they were all remote, but on Fridays they would work together. But they would choose a different place every Friday, which is fun, just in an enjoyable way, but also helps that avoid routine.
Yeah.
And you were saying there's another thing that workplaces can do is part of that flexible hours means that people can come in at different times as well.
Yes. Yeah, so if you have these people who may be targeting you, trying to figure out your routine, they wouldn't figure that out because of that flexible work hours, or even like if you're all working remotely, go meeting in different places. Yeah. Yeah, so this is a site. It's exifdata.com. If you want to test like a photo, make sure that this photo doesn't have sensitive, information in the photo itself, just to check whether there's a GPS embedded in that, so you can upload it, and then it will analyze that and provide you a result of like what's the EXIF data in that photo. Okay, so you can do that.
So we're getting towards the end of our talk, and here are some key takeaways that we want for you to have. Create your own personal threat model. See what online platforms you're on, and if you don't need to be on them, shut them down. Make sure there isn't data just out in the ether waiting to be found. If your LinkedIn profile is publicly searchable, turn that off. Make sure that it's really people who are looking to employ you, or people actually in your network who are logged in, who are the only people who see it. Be vain. Use search engines and see what people can find about you without even trying. And then check if you have been pwned. Haveibeenpwned.com. See if your email or phone has been in a data breach.
If you're in the IT side, or the tech side of the company looking after, let's just say, email, you can subscribe to Have I Been Pawned, like for your corporate domain there, and let's just say Maize at xyzgames.com's account is like a part of a data breach. You'll get that notification from Have I Been Pawned.
Yeah. And we're all pretty tech savvy. We're all used to teaching our loved ones things. So share the knowledge that you got here for people who may be less security aware. And then part of that compartmentalization and part of that risk management is removing family members or info about family members from your online platforms. We've seen that family and close friends can be targeted in harassment campaigns, and this is just helping to limit the spread. Through all this, your mental health will be affected if something happens. So ask a trusted person to be your support person. You know, maybe they can do these checks for you.
Yes.
Yeah, help relieve some of that.
The last part there is like something we're advocating for. Consider joining a union, because you're going to be part of a group wherein you'll have people who are aware of worker rights and who may have the text, the Infosec specific knowledge that could help you and will provide very useful and helpful information.
Yeah, if you're a game developer, then we're in the same union as the Infosec sector.
Yes.
So, there's lots of support to be had.
I lurk in the GWA Discord. I joke that I'm the Infosec NPC. Anyway.
So we're so lucky.
So we hope that everything that we've shared here will be of benefit to you and your loved ones, your community, your colleagues. Okay, I chose this particular quote to end this cybersecurity kung fu talk. Okay, the practice of martial art should be a practice of love for the preservation of life, for the preservation of body, and for the preservation of family and friends. So what we've shared here are things that you could apply, practical tips and techniques to help you protect and defend yourself. And we're hoping that you're not going to be using the OSINT for bad, but rather OSINT for good. And we hope, to see you around. And we're just online there, can ask questions. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.